wonder why God won't speak to you clearly? Like, I sometimes think, God, if you would come to me clearly and just say, Torrey, I want you to start this ministry. Torrey, I want you to go here. I want you to do this. I would do it. But sometimes it's just kind of hard to hear what God's got to tell me. When I'm thinking about that and I think about all the things that we go through in life, I think about Saul on the road to Damascus when God blinds him with a light and a huge and loud sound, and he speaks directly to Saul. And I'm thinking, God, why won't you do that to me? Just have a bush catch on fire or a light come up or you speak boldly to me. And then I look around and I think, God speaks to us all the time, but we're just not listening. God speaks to me all the time, but am I hearing what He's saying? It reminds me of the story of a guy who was just praying and praying for God to send him to do something big. And God gave him 2 numbers. And he started thinking about the numbers. He was going through the numbers in his head. He prayed about it, and he came up. There was an avenue and a street that crossed with the 5th and the 8th number. 5 and 8. What in the world does that mean? So he went over there, and there's an abandoned lot. And he said, God, what do you want me to do now? And God said, just preach. He said, to preach to what? There's an abandoned car here, some trash laying around. Who do you want me to speak to? And God just said, preach. So for weeks he preached. I think nearly 6 or 7 weeks he preached until he felt God lead him in a different direction. So he went in that direction. It was years later, and he was a featured speaker at a conference, and a guy came up to him and said, hey, do you remember 5th and 8th? The guy's like, yeah. He said, I went out there and spoke for weeks and there was nobody there. He said, well, do you remember that abandoned car? The guy's like, yeah, I think that's the only thing I was preaching to. He said, well, that was my home. He said, I was homeless and I lived in that car for weeks. And one morning I woke up and there was somebody speaking outside my car. So I kind of just sat up in the car and you never saw me. He said, but I listened each week that you came out there. He said, I think God changed my life through those 6 or 7 weeks. I accepted Jesus in that old abandoned car. See, God speaks to us all the time, but are we listening to Him? Are we hearing Him? You know, there's got to be a difference in what we do in this world. We should never leave this world the same way we found it. Let's make a difference.